thought I hit the button. Good evening, America. Sports reports is ordered. Yes. The even killed, Virginia born, New Jerusalem's own, Millville and Teaneck, where you at? Don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
Do not bark up that tree. That tree will fall on you. I don't know why your advisors ain't forewarned you. He is Mr. Logical. And over here, down in the Alamo, via Baltimore, blood of a slave, heart of a king, resident statistician, I am 5. And tonight, we're going to take a walk around the association, but in a little bit of a different way. We're going to talk about the state of the game. Where are we headed? Where should we go? Then we're going to talk about the one and only Eric Bieniemy of the state. He goes on to Westwood to be the associate head coach at UCLA. And of course, you know, we're going to get this thing started with that thing that we like to call get it off my chest. So, Mr. Logical, unwrap it and do the honors. Pause.
Yeah, so pause. We've all probably seen the footage. It's kind of, you got to understand context. You just have footage. I've seen 2 clips. One where these 3 men attempted to assault Cam Newton. And I've been reading a lot of these articles, and I've told a story a couple times, and it's like, he's like 6'6", or he's like 6'5", 250. Then you read one thing, he's 6'7", 260. You read something else, he's 6'4", 245. Either way, this man is a huge professional athlete. I have a couple of friends, like I said, in Utah that are 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". Looks like a giant individual. But he doesn't lift any weights, anywhere near the amount of weights that Cam Newton lifts. So when these dudes attempted to jump him, first of all, the first dude that threw the punch, he threw a right hand, but his right foot wasn't on the ground. You can't get any power in that punch. You can't throw a jump punch at Cam Newton. And maybe you had to because you're 5'7" trying to fight Cam Newton. And then he held you off while being bear hugged by another guy and his hat didn't move. And I know it seems comical now because it looks like there wasn't any serious injuries that resulted from it. Maybe some embarrassment. Luckily, these guys all had hoodies on. We couldn't see who they were. We just know it's Cam because he's a giant individual with dreads on the top of his hat, which have him pretty much at 6'10". So his dreads and everything else. So, we know it's Cam. We don't know, who these other guys are. So you have that in your back pocket to where you're not being publicly shamed because we couldn't see your faces. But it was poor form. It was flat out poor form to behave like that. My son went to a football camp probably like 7-8 years ago. Eli Manning was there. He did throw a pick, but no one fought Eli Manning. I mean, no one fought Peyton Manning. No one does these things at these other events. And I don't know if it's a demographic. I don't know if it's our energy. I don't know if it's, this narrative that we feel like we have to be the toughest people in the room at all times. But that's just flat out idiotic. It's idiotic because you're out there with kids. You're at an event where a guy, I'm pretty sure Cam's not going to stop. He might hire more effective security. And then you talk about guys saying like, oh, these guys always roll around with security. Well, this is why. People want to get clout off of them. People want to do things. So it's just like, I don't understand why our events, we turn them into that. We turn them into spectacles that are outside the bounds of just, basic common decency and respect. People say, oh, Cam does so much for the community. You are out there doing something for the community. Like the people who are the leaders, TSP, I think it's like Total Sports Performance or something like that. you guys are examples for your players. So you can't go try to coach a player up on his responsibilities when you're out here throwing fists with the guy who organized, and the headline such a major event.
Right.
We talked about all the social media exposure that these guys aren't getting because we can't see their faces. Well, the players for their team, uh, you get a guy that makes a great pass, a great catch, a great interception on this platform. Cam Newton tags him in it. Now the head coach at Kansas or some scout at Kansas sees it or some scout at Iowa sees it and is like, oh, this guy, who is this guy? He's 17. He's going into his senior year. Like, let's follow this guy. Let's check out his social media. Because you're in that space. So for you to now kind of just dim the light of your own program with that behavior is the biggest problem. Fighting Cam Newton is what it is. Your emotions going to run high, but you have to recognize that, listen, I'm in a position of leadership to lead young men. And people always talk about how young black men need leadership. Older black men, we need to be guide. We need to be the Gandalfs to these young men as well. So we need to understand, like, listen, we are the leaders. No matter if this guy has his father in his life or a good uncle in his life or older brother in his life, you can be another person. He doesn't have to not have a male figure in his life for you to be a good role model. You could be another one. Like, you could be the third or fourth guy that he looks to. Is like, oh, my father does this, my uncle does this. I met Cam Newton. He sends me messages on Instagram. My coaches. You can be part of this village that raises these children. And when you act like that publicly and just stupid, like, you weren't gonna get Cam Newton on the ground. He used to run through tackles from Luke Kuechly. Come on, the man had 45 touchdowns one year. Only person that can take him down is Von Miller. Von Miller's bigger than him. You're not trying to fight Von Miller. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I just wish people would. I wish we, as black people, I understand we shouldn't have to take on the burden all the time for all black people's behavior. But sometimes you got to look at it like, is my behavior, is this event going to overshadow what these young men are trying to do out in this field? Coupled with it's probably a lot of people out there. It's probably a lot of people managing social media accounts. There's probably a lot of, young men and women who are doing that. You probably got a lot of young men and women photographers. You probably got a lot of parents out there. It's just there's such a swell of positivity and work and effort that people are putting into this. Why would you put yourself in a position to ruin all of that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my get off my chest. Like, listen, I understand, like, emotions run high, but you have to think big picture.
Right. So, I don't know, man. You said it all, but it's just wild to think about, So get it off my chest. As a parent, part of your job is to anticipate the future. You know that your kid is going to touch the stove. You know that your kid going to get a little too close to the electrical outlets. I was having a conversation, with my wife one time when my son was 4. My youngest son, he's 8 now. She told me, why are you talking to him like that? He's only 5 years old. And I said, because I'm talking to 9-year-old him. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to say something now that will prevent something that might happen later. So I was thinking about this weekend as I had memories of LeGarrette Blount, popping the Boise State guy. I had the memory a few months ago of Caitlin Clark, when she flopped, when, the fans were rushing to court, but the other day, unfortunately, Kyle Filipowski from Duke was not able to shake the fans. Wake Forest coming downhill, somebody clipped him in the knee. So I say that to say, I don't have a problem with court storming or field storming, but there has to be more nuance to it as far as let's get the other team off the field or let's get both teams off the field. And now y'all have fun. Go throw the goalpost in the river like Tennessee did if you want. Actually showed up on Google Maps too, but anyway, he got injured. So we saw LeGarrette Blount punching people. We saw a Nebraska player last year I believe, got hit by a fan this past season, football player. So, what has to happen for court storming to be viewed in a serious way as a danger? Hopefully, this isn't it because I don't know the extent of his injury. I just know it was his knee. So sometimes the threat is not here right now, but it's imminent.
That's legit. He stuck his leg out, by the way. And Caitlin Clark ran into that girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of self-preservation and self-awareness. I believe it was like a big high school game. Maybe it was a college. And they saw the fans were going to storm the court. And the players on the losing team, he just took off running. I remember watching him run away from the wave of people. And he kept his head up and he just ran off the court. You know what's coming. I remember the Duke Clemson game last year, the football game. They had fans already out of the stands with a few minutes left in the game. I'm like, in what stadium are they? Like, there was fans on the sideline of Duke with the football.
They were in the They were on deck like they were playing baseball.
Yo, legit. Like they were out there like they were all team managers, just out there giving out water. They were literally on top of the players. I'm like, that's not a safe thing because you got people out there that don't understand. We got to pay attention. A football's coming, a play's coming your way. They don't know how quickly the running back running out of bounds, how quickly he can get from the hash mark to the bench after he's pushed, and to get out of the way. We've seen coaches get injured that way. Saw the coach that got knocked over. Was it the Philly coach that stood up? He had the thong on. He got knocked over.
I think so.
So it's like,
and I know Kamara took out one of the workers this year.
Yeah, somebody like one of the photographer or a sound guy got his leg complete. Got his leg torn up.
Dennis Rodman kicking people and
he kicked over in the nuts. LeBron got his head hit. Remember that?
With the camera.
A little blood.
But we wanted to get started with the state of the association. Even though ratings are up from last season, when I was looking at it earlier, I believe the number was, here it is right here. It's up 16% from last year. But the NBA doesn't seem to have the buzz that it used to have, even though the ratings are good, even though the game is growing globally. So wanted to have this conversation. We talked about it a little bit last night on Cups in the Gang, shout out to the crew, and I wanted to get Mr. Logical's thoughts on this,
Sure.
So as far as the NBA goes, does it feel to you, don't bring feelings to a fact fight, but I'm just saying, do you feel that it's not as exciting, or are you not as excited as a fan as you usually are? Has that changed at all for you?
I think as I'm pulling up another game right now.
Yeah, I'm about to watch Kings and Heat, but no Jimmy Butler because he's suspended.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now. Like I said to you, we were having a conversation in the pre-meeting. I think the current state of the NBA, and if we're comparing it to, because the NBA players, they don't wear helmets, they don't wear masks, they don't wear any kind of thing that obstructs their face. So it makes them easy to market.
Right.
And I think we can go back to Barcelona Olympics. It's, if you watch any documentary, it's one of those things that was like the benchmark where, basketball expanded. It's very similar to when the Beatles played Ed Sullivan back in the 60s. It was like a lot of musical historians point to that moment as like, that's one of the biggest impacts in music, because when people saw the Beatles, a lot of bands kind of modeled themselves after that. And it was like, wow, these guys can go global, so can I. So with the 92 Dream Team going over there, Jordan was an icon. I think he had just won championship number 2.
Sounds about right. Because they won the first one in 91, yeah.
But he was already on shoe number 7. So like the shoe was already global. They were already iconic shoes. And that was like just 1 through 7. And the NBA started kind of marketing their players a lot more. Recent players I think just don't have that same marketability. And then one of your points, I don't want to steal it, but I'll bring it up and let you expound on it. The rivalry kind of dissipated during the marketing of the player.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll use example like Ray Allen when he got traded. Ray Allen KG got traded to Boston. They had like a personal beef essentially between those three and LeBron. It wasn't Boston, Cleveland, and it wasn't Boston, Miami. It was those three guys, LeBron, we're better than him. You mix in Rondo in there. But then Ray Allen goes down to Miami. He creates a beef between KG and Paul Pierce. And then when LeBron goes to LA, Rondo plays in LA and they win a championship. So each one of these guys who supposedly had a beef with him when he was a member of the Cavaliers and the Heat, both won championships with him outside of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So the marketing of the player kind of squashed the team rivalry piece. So now anytime you talk about a player, if there's no beef, no rivalry, there's like the excitement to watch the game. Like Chet and Wemby should be prime time every time it's on because they're both unicorns, they're both young. You have Chet, who's an American player. I know it's a knock on like American players, especially American like skilled big men. And Wemby is French guy, #1 overall pick. Right. But I'm not sure if they make that a marquee. Like that should be deliberately a marquee matchup. But the NBA just doesn't. They don't have those same conversations. They highlight so many of their legends that the current player can't outshine the legend. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, so I was looking at it. The NBA obviously started its popularity off the back of Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this was a thing because they had just played in the college basketball national title game against each other. Then they come to the league, and the league got fortunate that they met a few times during the 80s. Only 4 or 5 teams made the finals in the 80s anyway.
And you had Larry went to the White City, Magic went to the Showtime City. It wouldn't have worked reversed.
Right. And like I said last night, this was the first East Coast, West Coast war. This predated Tupac and Biggie. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So this was the war. And this was like the 30 for 30 covered it. The black versus white. It was like a lot of elements that
blue collar versus Hollywood,
right?
White versus black.
And it brought all that to the forefront. But I've been talking to Celtics fans. I've been talking to Laker fans. And right now, they don't necessarily have that in them. Like if they're under the age of 30, generally, they don't have that in them because they only seen, Boston and LA match up in 2008 and 2010. So to them, it's just another finals that happened.
Whereas, and that's half their life. That's the thing about it. Like to us, it doesn't seem that far away. But 2007, 8, 9, that's 16, 17, 18 years ago. Like that's
right.
If they're 30, from the time they were 12, all they knew was these individual beefs. Like post, like 2011 was 13 years ago. So if you're 26 or 27, LeBron for the decision, but that's why you don't like him as an individual. You don't like him because it has nothing to do with him being a Cleveland.
Anything basketball related or like
it's just that conversation.
So to whereas contrast that with the NFL, as a commander or commodore or commando, whatever you want to call us,
the generals, whatever they're going to be next year.
Yeah, whatever you want to call us. We want the Cowboys to lose every game. We want the Eagles to lose every game. We want the Giants to lose every game because there's an NFC East division. Mr. Logical wants to see the Saints lose every week.
I like Derek Carr, but if he went 0-17, it wouldn't bother me at all.
Wouldn't hurt your feelings. Yeah. So as we look at it in the NBA, divisions don't mean anything. Like I was listening to a podcast earlier, and it's like, who's going to win the Northwest Division? Minnesota, Denver, or OKC? And I was just like, yo, you're the only person that is thinking about this in that way. Like, and I'm sure we could tell you who won divisions years ago and everything like that. But it was just because this was the 1 seed or this was the 2 seed or so on and so forth. So also, now the NBA is talking about expanding, Las Vegas and Seattle, shout out to the hat, seems like they're in the chamber right now, but outside of money, which is obviously it's a business.
Yes.
Is there a need to expand? Like, is there as a fan, is there enough talent to go around to bring in 2 expansion teams?
I think this is what we have as far as like talent and expanding. I say this all the time when I'm at work when people are trying to make these decisions. Like, listen, you guys are trying to fix the roof when the foundation has problems. We get these young basketball players, and they have great buzz through overtime elite, the internet, their high school teams. They're playing everywhere. They get great buzz. In college football, that works because most of these top players go to top schools and they compete at the top level. Trevor Lawrence, Sean Watson, Tua, Jalen Hurts, a lot of these top quarterbacks, they go to the big school. You get those matchups at some point. Justin Fields going to Georgia, transferring Ohio State. You get to see this high school kid that you saw on a Netflix documentary. Now he goes to college. Sam Hartman was on a Netflix documentary. Spencer Rattler. We still follow him. If a kid that wants to go to the NBA, he can't come straight out of high school. So he goes either overseas, G League, or OTE. Well, I don't know what their TV deals look like. So essentially, from the end of their high school season until the NBA draft conversation comes around the following year, keep in mind, they graduate high school, maybe they go early May or early like January, February, however that works, or they go traditionally, they graduate in June. We don't hear about this guy who is this highly touted number 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 overall player. We don't hear about him again until the draft comes up. And then you put his numbers up from this French league that he played in, and he averaged 9 points, 4 rebounds, and it's like,
Why
then
you calling out my guy Koulibaly like that?
I'm saying, so it's like we don't follow them. Whereas if you allow that buzz to go straight from high school into the NBA, and then you let that young talent develop in the NBA, then we can start transitioning off these conversations about some of these old heads. Like there should be a guy in the league that we look at as the next CP3 when it's his time. But we got CP3 still, and that's all we focus on. Because the young guy goes away for a year. We don't see him. We don't see or hear from him until the draft analysis starts coming up. And then it's like, well, we see them you look, like I said, you get their stats from the pro league and it doesn't translate. So then you go right back to just watching Steph. You go right back to watching Kawhi. You go right back to watching Paul George. You go right back to seeing where James Harden is going. Who's going to trade for Trae Young? And it's like all these young guys are coming in and they lose all their buzz. Mm-hmm. And then they go to a terrible team. People don't watch that team. They don't market that team because there's no other star in that team. Hence why these young guys go to these terrible teams. And they just kind of get lost in the sauce. Right. That's the NBA's fault. The NBA should be trying to find ways to highlight every team. Like if you get in the top 10, the NBA should be trying to put you on TV more than the Lakers.
Well, see, like when the in-season tournament came up, the NBA's worst nightmare happened. The Indiana Pacers made it to the championship. Even though they were playing against the Lakers, it was the Indiana Pacers. And a lot of people got introduced to Tyrese Halliburton, who I've been talking about for at least 2 years. But
when he got traded from Sacramento, like a lot of the pundits were like, this doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah, I don't know why Sacramento. If I was Sacramento, I would have kept him and let Fox go. But but as we were looking at it, though, Indiana, they were beating Boston in the in-season tournament. They beat Milwaukee a few times, and people still were like, "Who's this Halliburton guy?" Now, unfortunately, he got hurt right after the in-season tournament, but now he's back. He was an all-star, and you see him. I saw him on some podcasts recently, but he's still not in the conscience, I think, of the typical NBA fan, or I guess the casual. So as I'm looking at this, I'm going back to the NBA draft. I've seen Wemby on TV quite a few times, usually when they're playing the Lakers. We've seen Chet because he plays for OKC and they started coming up last year. But I'm like, okay, the number 4 and 5 picks of the draft are twins, that went back to back in the draft. And I want to know how many games of Asar and Amen Thompson the fan of the NBA has watched or seen or heard about them. Now, Asar, you might not hear about him as much because Detroit is the worst team in the league, but Amen is on the Rockets that went out and paid the money for Fred VanVleet, paid the money for Dylan Brooks, has Ime Udoka as your head coach. So from a business standpoint, why wouldn't you put them on TV just because Ime is so polarizing? So and that's the thing, is that growing up now as a Wizards fan, we're in the Southeast Division with Orlando, Charlotte, Atlanta, in Miami, but who do Wizard fans hate? Nobody, right?
Nobody.
You might hate them all because we losing to them all, but you know what I mean? But who do you hate?
I think right now they hate the contract that old boy signed.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, he got demoted. But so when I'm 80 years old with no teeth in my mouth, I'ma still be screaming. I'm still gonna be screaming, fuck the Gators. Saying, still got that email address, by the way. I hate the Gators at yahoo.com. I made it when I was 16. But I'm still gonna be hating on the Cowboys, Dak Prescott's grandson or something. You know what I mean? Like, this is how it works. But in the NBA, I can't even count on Lakers and Celtic fans to still hate each other. So, like, long term, David Stern marketed the players. Is that going to be a problem long term down the road? Or do you think that the TV deals are so great that it won't have an effect?
I think once I'm trying to figure out how I can phrase this. Because if you think about the Warriors a few weeks ago were interested in trading for LeBron.
Right.
The guy that essentially ruined their quote unquote perfect season.
Right.
Granted, it was a team game. And then you played him back to back. He dropped 50 points on one of your NBA Finals games. It's like, why are you trying to trade for LeBron? They should be rivals. They should be, you could be amicable, you could be friendly, you could be business associates. But as far as like playing on the floor, teams shouldn't be looking to build with their rivals. But that's what it is with these, because everyone's chasing a chip. Because if you could talk about, remember when Houston won like 20-something games in a row?
Yeah,
Tracy
T-Mac
McGrady.
Uh-huh.
I don't recall 6 or 7 TV shows the following morning after they won 17 in a row or 18 in a row saying something like, well, if they don't win the championship, all of that was for nothing. You make a move now in the NBA where you trade for a guy, and it's like, well, if you don't win the championship, now you made this trade, it was a waste of trade. So right. I think this using the highest grading standard available for a league is like, you all have to win championship for this move to make sense.
Right.
That is, I think that's going to, hopefully that slows down, because they're always talking about so many guys' legacies. So once these guys like KD, Harden, Russ, once these guys are out of the league or they're out of that realm where the expectation is for them to win championships, then they're going to have to market some other players. Because I don't think any young players have won championships in recent years. If we kind of go back, like any young led teams, like OKC, like none of those young guys. Sacramento, that's a young team. Atlanta's a young team.
I mean, the last few champions were, Lakers,
Warriors, Milwaukee with an older Giannis. Boston was in the NBA Finals. Who won it last year? I'm drawing a blank.
The Nuggets.
So, like, but their star player doesn't care about legacy, so you can't even really have like if you ask Jokic about his legacy, you wouldn't even really have an answer. So I
Right.
think that's gonna fade. So once the legacy championships being the ultimate benchmark, once that fades, then they're gonna have to put the Thompson twins on. They're gonna have to put Chet versus Wemby on the marquee. They're gonna have to figure out how to get Ja Morant and Zion Williamson to be the faces of the league.
Well, I'm
Anthony
sure they would
Edwards.
like. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure they would like Anthony Edwards, but problem number one is he plays in Minnesota.
I don't
Which
think
is
so. I think you realign the conferences, you move him to the East, and then you
mhm.
get him more games in New York. You get him more games in Philly. Because if you look at the
But it
map,
doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter if like if they don't win a championship or something. It doesn't matter if First Take, Undisputed,
they're
The
gonna have to
Herd
talk about him. They're
don't
gonna
talk
have
about.
to. They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to because LeBron has this next April. That's um, April, June playoffs, whatever playoff. I can't see him playing at 41 or even wanting to play at 41. His son should maybe potentially gets an opportunity to league starting this summer with the draft or
Well,
free agency.
he's off the mock boards right now.
Yeah, but
And somebody will sign him as a free agent.
somebody, yeah. So he'll get an like
Like
potentially he
somebody
gets an
signed Scottie
opportunity.
Pippen's son for some reason.
The Lakers did. I'm saying so he'll get an opportunity. So CP3, how many years he has left?
Well, he comes back tomorrow, and of course, against my Wizards.
Okay, you got a guy like Kyle Lowry. People don't know Kyle Lowry and like LeBron, CP3. They're all like the same age. So
Yeah,
soon as these guys who kind of carried the league from 2010 up till today start to just retire or just kind of fade away, then
right.
you're gonna have to find the that De'Aaron Fox Anthony Edwards matchup. You're gonna have to move it up because it's gonna
Yeah,
be on the West Coast, whatever the time is. So it's like the NBA is gonna have to change their model. They'll probably just hire a bunch of guys like Draymond Green and Chris Paul will be on TV all the time to kind of keep that bridge together.
right.
But at some point, you're gonna have to realize, like, yo, Kevin Durant's not gonna be in this league forever. You
Well,
gotta highlight somebody else.
the last question I wanted to ask you before we move on is what do you think the impact of like AAU is? Because like these guys come up together, they know each other. They've been playing with each other since they were 13. Through the college years, if they went to college and all that, and they get to the NBA, so they're friends. Now, for example, like we talked about Magic and Bird, how they played for the national title. Well, Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing played each other in a national title game in college. So, there was an extra story there when the Bulls and Knicks played in the playoffs because it's like, hey, is Patrick going to get his get back? And then when he didn't come back next year, is Patrick going to get his get back? So, but do you think that
But
AAU
I think Patrick Ewing was viewed as one of the top players at his positions, and he was
definitely,
marketed
definitely,
as
definitely,
such.
yeah,
So that Ewing versus Jordan, Jordan versus Ewing, Nick versus Bulls, it was hailed as this alpha versus this alpha bringing their team to meet in this arena
right,
to battle it out. I think there's the Instagram, AAU, high school marketing aspect of it. I think the NBA is going to have to lean into it. They're going to have to maybe re-evaluate the one and done rule because you're going to need buzz.
right,
Because you got guys that go to college now. If there's a guy right now who's a junior who's averaging 19 points, 6 rebounds for like DePaul or something. The knock on him would be if he was any good, he would have left after his freshman or sophomore
yeah,
year.
yeah,
So you can't even follow the relationship and you can't develop a following after you're 20 years old. Like the
right,
NBA, like that NBA narrative has ostracized you. We talked about before in the meeting, Jello Ball. He's playing in like some Mexican league. And
right.
at no point have I saw him and thought he can't play on an NBA roster.
Mhm. especially in a league that shoots so many threes.
Shoots so many threes. Even like, hey, if he doesn't play defense, you get him with the right coaches. Listen, if you want to I'll give you 4 threes a game if you give me 75% defensive effort.
Yeah.
I'll call 4 plays for you where you can pop these threes. You go 2 for 4 if you're lucky.
Steve Nash won an MVP without 2 MVPs without defense.
Didn't play an ounce of defense.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that. Like I still love basketball. I'm not as excited about the NBA just because it's just a 3-point contest. The All-Star game was like the epitome of why I'm not as in love. It has nothing to do with, old man or Jordan or any of that. I just don't like the fact that every team is basically the same outside of the Lakers because they can't shoot. And I hate the fact that anytime you want to talk basketball or watch basketball on TV, hear experts talk about basketball, they talk about one player.
Or they compare current players to legends when you can't get a definitive answer, and that becomes
give me a Dame Kyrie comparison. You know what I mean? Give me a Jason
Halliburton versus Fox was a trade worth it conversation.
There you go. Like that's
SGA, like I said, SGA versus Trae Young. Like, who's going to be the next young small guard to walk in the steps of? Like, you could bring up Isaiah Thomas by saying, "Hey, I got 2 small guards. Can you build and win with these 2 guys? How do you do that?"
Like the way Isaiah did, and then you take him out the conversation after that.
But instead of saying, "Oh, Isaiah Thomas was the only small guard to do it. Steph can't do what Isaiah Thomas did," and it's like that conversation is so ridiculous because you can look at the accomplishments and be like, "But you're gonna have an argument, but you can't settle it." I can settle Trae Young versus SGA,
and then that conversation always happens without the context.
Completely lacking context. Contextless.
Yeah. So. Switching sports, switching gears, no LeVar Ball. We got Eric Bieniemy, taking a job at UCLA under Deshaun Foster as the associate head coach, which I assume is assistant head coach. This is his second time at UCLA. He was a running back coach there in the early 2000s or so. So I was listening to him earlier today, or I guess somebody that talked to him said that he did receive interest from NFL teams to be their offensive coordinator this offseason, but he had to sit back, reflect, and decide what he wanted to do, and this is what he chose to do. So, Mr. Logical, what's the end game here?
I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either. I don't believe it either. But what's the end game here for him?
We talked about this a lot. We talked about it on camera. We talked about it off camera. I don't know what his expectations are. If you would have gone to a team that's consistently churning out NFL coaches from the offensive coordinator position, granted, I know Alabama is like an anomaly, but a lot of coaches went to Alabama after just failed stints, for lack of a better word, throughout the country, throughout the professional league or the college ranks. They go to Alabama, they get 1 or 2 years, they use that talent pool, they put their system to work, and now they look like genius coaches. Let's keep it 100. If I'm an offensive line coach and I go to Alabama, I'm going to look like a genius because every offensive lineman in Alabama, I think they're bigger than some NFL teams. Like just across the board from tackle to tackle.
Right.
They were bigger than most NFL teams. I don't think there's a defensive line in college football that's bigger than any NFL defensive line, to include Alabama, like from end to end. So if I have an offensive line that's bigger than bigger than some NFL teams playing against college kids, I'm gonna look like a great offensive line coach.
Right.
And then you use that to catapult yourself forward. I'm not sure. Like I said, last year we talked about the move to Washington. I thought that wasn't going to work simply because I didn't think Washington had the stability from the top, considering that owners were coming out publicly calling for the head of Daniel Snyder.
Right.
So once again, like if I'm looking at that information and I'm Eric Bieniemy, because like I had it as a fan. I'm not an insider, so I knew that it was going to all end in tears in Washington. But yeah, he left the Super Bowl winning combination between him and Mahomes because he called the plays every year. Andy Reid made it known, like, listen, EB calls the plays. This is his play calling. We game plan together, obviously, but he calls the plays. Mahomes went to him, whether it was an argument or an agreement. He went to Eric Bieniemy, and they made magic
Yeah,
happen. And
allegedly
they
he
won the
was the
Super
one
Bowl.
that pointed out
He
the
won an
touchdowns
MVP.
that Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney scored in that Super Bowl based off of how Philly was playing defense.
And they still ran that play, and they won another Super Bowl because of it, because that's the seed that he planted. For him not to see like that, like that is your path. He could have looked across the building at Steve Spagnuolo. Steve tried to coach. Didn't
11
work
and
out.
41. 11 and 41.
Didn't work out. Now he has 4 rings as a coordinator. He's probably gonna go up. He's probably gonna go to Hall of Fame because of it.
We
won't even look at his 11 and 41.
He's the only coordinator in NFL history with 4 Super Bowls.
4. Bill Belichick has 2. I think Nagy has 2 at this point now. So I don't know. I just you use the phrase betting on yourself. I just wish that it was a little bit more of a logical decision. Like if you would have called me, I would have told him like, yo, don't leave Kansas City.
Yeah.
Negotiate a pay raise.
Don't leave Kansas City unless you're going to Buffalo with Josh Allen, maybe Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, like maybe Justin Herbert. Like you got to have something in place because we talk about how Sam Howell led the league in passing yards for a couple of weeks, right? You seen Sam Howell's touchdown to interception ratio?
Is it 1-to-1 or 1.5 to 1, something like that?
21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. You know what I mean? So run the damn ball, first of all. You know what I'm saying? Second of all, I was thinking earlier, and I'm upset because, you know, we record later in the day. I was listening to Danny Cannell on my way home from work, and he said something that I wanted to say. I'm going to still say it, but I got to give him the credit because he said it first. Even though I did think it, you know, first, but, you know, whatever. But maybe the end game is Deion's not going to be at Colorado for a long time. And Eric Bieniemy is angling to go back home. Even though he could have had that job previously, you know, maybe he thinks, or at this stage, maybe Colorado being his alma mater is the only place that is going to give him a head coaching job. Unless Ethan Garbers goes ham for the next 2 years for UCLA and you get something like a AAC job, you know, a UTSA when their coach leaves, something like that.
But we talked about this the other day. He's currently 54.
Right, he's 54 years old. And that's why the NFL thing wasn't going to work because outside of Dan Quinn, you know, all these coaches that got hired this cycle, just about beside him and Harbaugh, you know, the rest of these coaches are 38, they're 40.
But that's been the case for the last few years. I think he was already behind the age power curve because I think Vrabel got hired a few years ago at Tennessee. I think he's 48. All the McVay, Shanahan, that whole trio of coaches, they were all in their 30s, like the LaFleurs and all these other guys. McDaniels, all these guys were in their 30s, and it was all working. So you mix that with, like I said, like we talked about this literally a year ago. Maybe he just doesn't interview well.
Mm-hmm.
You had, like I said, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. You had everything you needed with Patrick Mahomes because he was getting all the credit. Every single time he wasn't getting hired as a head coach, the pundits that were on TV to include, and then you can add Andy Reid saying like Eric Bieniemy calls the plays. They had gone to back to back to back to back to back AFC Championship games. Obviously, they went again this year without him. But
Right.
I imagine that if he was there, maybe he would have noticed that Kadarius Toney was not going to be in his head and ready early on because they said he was tough on players. And maybe they get to those drag routes that they started throwing later in the season earlier because he is like this is his system.
Right.
So I hope it works out for him and UCLA. I just don't know like how much longer are you gonna do this? And you factor in all this NIL stuff that's going on with different judges. You got federal judges that can say one thing if they decide to factor in it. State judges say one thing. This lawyer argues another thing. Like, do you want to go from the NFL where you pretty much was sitting what just quote Skip Bayless the catbird seat?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go on the road recruiting? Do you want to go sit in living rooms all over America trying to get these players coming to? It just seems like he's hustling backwards.
If nothing else, you just said it. He's got the ultimate recruiting card, right? I coached Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get a check though.
This could be you, but I think that for the most part, he's going to be UCLA's head coach this year. Deshaun Foster has never been a coordinator.
How old is he?
He's 44. He's been a running back coach, for the last 6 or 7 years, 8 years now, 2017, I believe, at UCLA. He was going to leave to be the Raiders running back coach this year before UCLA called him. Yeah. So Eric Bieniemy may be, at least for this year, driving the bus a little bit, So I think that if I'm someone who may have some kind of interest,
but if he has that outlook, how is he gonna? Even with that being said, having that outlook and working for a guy that's 10 years younger than you looks way different than you. When you're on a staff with guys who are your peers.
I know, but I'm sure there's been coordinators that work for coaches that they're older than. That's a thing.
Yeah, but a lot of those coordinators had their run at the head coaching spot and were like, either they were content being coordinators, like a guy like Dick LeBeau. Dick LeBeau just seemed to be like, listen, man, let me just run this zone blitz scheme.
Yeah, Bud Foster at Virginia Tech. Yeah.
Let me just run this scheme. I got it. I'm locked in. We talk about Spags. Wade Phillips, when he would come back to the NFL, he seemed to be like, sometimes I was like, why are you a coordinator? But maybe you figure like, you know what? I don't want to go to all the meetings. I don't want to do all the press conferences. I don't want to come up with the whole game.
I don't want to kiss the babies. I don't want to
shake hands. I don't want to do all of that stuff. I just want to coach.
Right.
Like Deion, like we talked about Deion. Deion is the ultimate showman. He's like the greatest showman on some, what's the boy named Wolverine? The greatest showman. I mean, but that's what Deion does. And I think Deion trusts his coordinators because he has the vision, like you guys, and then you have your vision of offense, your vision of defense. Let me recruit players to fit your vision. I want them to fit my style. I want them aggressive. I want them to be leaders and dogs.
Now but he might have done it again. He might have done it again. Because you talked about how going to Washington was a bad move. It was a dumb move on top of being bad.
It was a bad move.
But now you're taking over UCLA, or you're going to be at UCLA their first year entering the Big Ten. So right now, their FanDuel over under is 5.5. So let me go down this schedule for you real quick.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? Let me go down this schedule for you real quick. So UCLA 2024 regular season schedule. Starting out at Hawaii.
That should be a win.
Versus Indiana.
Toss
Should
up.
be a win. Should be a
Should
win.
be.
They did hire James Madison's head coach though, so Kurt Signetti. So
You never know. He might bring that winning
Are you
culture.
ready? You ready for this 3-game stretch?
Oh God, let's hear it.
At LSU,
Loss.
home versus Oregon,
Loss.
at Happy Valley,
Loss.
all right. Back
So
home.
they're 2-3.
Back home from Minnesota.
After a 3-game losing streak, you never know. That might be.
They might quit.
That might be it might be like, yo, we're not winning.
After Minnesota, they're coming to a stadium near you.
Playing Rutgers?
Yeah.
That's a loss.
All right, you
Shout out
ready?
to Scarlet Knights.
You ready?
Yep.
At Nebraska.
Loss.
Home versus Iowa.
Loss.
At Washington.
Loss.
Home versus USC.
Loss.
And then they close with Fresno State at home.
So 3, where they play 12 games?
Yep.
So 3-9.
I got them like 5-7, but yeah, like I don't think they're going bowling unless they get the exception because there's not enough bowl eligible teams. And so that's why I said like this is another thing because like a lot of people, once people have a narrative about you, it's very hard to change it. So if your narrative is I don't want to hire this dude, I don't think he's any good, he doesn't have a vision, I don't know how good he is. He goes 5-7, there's no context. There's no.
He went to watch. He already did this. He already made the bad decision to go to a bad team.
So you know what?
He should have just really negotiated to go back to Kansas City. What can I do to come back here?
I think we just answered the question of why he's not a head coach in the NFL because he makes bad decisions.
It seems like his decision making either he doesn't have the right board of directors that really give him guidance, or he doesn't listen. Because, like I said, I am not an insider. I am not an insider, and I clearly stated everything that was going to go wrong in Washington a year ago. And I'm not even a fan of the team. You are. I'm like, this is what's going to happen. The owner, people want him gone. All these harassment cases. He's going to go from
coach is going to be gone. We knew that.
Ron Rivera, we had Ron Rivera out in 2022. You and I in conversation, we had him on a hot seat entering that season.
Right.
Let alone making it through 2023 season.
So now you decide to go work for a first-time head coach. Granted, it's at his alma mater and it's somewhere that you've worked before, but you're going to
they have an allegiance to him and not you.
And we're talking about UCLA. The last time I checked, Westwood was about basketball. They don't have the football commitment. That's why a part of the reason why they are not the Trojans.
And they are in California, the third best state as far as high school prospects. It goes Florida, Texas, California. I think that they alternate, but those are the top 3 states. So you have one of the most popular cities in the world. Your university is there, and the third best state for high school player production, and you have been mediocre.
Yep.
For well over a decade.
Yep.
I don't think they sniffed 10 wins.
Chip Kelly's best season was 9 wins, and that includes the bowl game. They were like 9-4. They went 8-5 last year. They had a little success under Jim Mora Jr., but like that didn't last very long. Obviously, the best thing about UCLA is their uniforms.
Yeah, just that. Like I said, I think it's just one bad decision on top
funny
of
how
one. For a guy, I think is very talented. Because you got to keep in mind, he had Alex Smith looking like a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, I'm sure Eric Bieniemy would love to have Dante Moore.
He'd hate to hear our show.
I mean, it is what it is. He needs to listen to it. You know what I'm saying? He needs to listen to it.
I gave you the blueprint last year why you should have taken that job.
Well, look, man, Josh McDaniels went through that, so hopefully you ain't have to go through that. You know what
He
I'm saying?
crawls so you can walk, and you just walk right to the hornet's nest.
But before we get out of here, we wanted to touch on this real quick story. Of course, the new NCAA football game is coming out. Pre-order at GameStop is open apparently, but these players are like, hey, we want to get paid for our name, image, and likeness. Oh, about, NIL. And, so they worked out a deal, I guess, and EA Sports came back and said, okay, we worked it out to where $600 per player. So at first I was like, that's a small amount of money, but considering how many college football players there are, I don't know what's realistic for real, but what I do know, and of course, as a former airman, saying the military be full of it sometimes, like a lot of these dudes, get NFL tryouts and then they be like, nah, you can't get out your commitment, dog. And then the public has to come through. The public has to come through and be like, free him. Free him.
2 years. I know we got Chad Hall, Lieutenant Chad Hall with the Air Force Academy. He was on the Falcons practice squad. And then I was giving him a tour of the shop at Hill. He did his 2 years at an MOS.
And
then
so
he went to the Eagles.
So now, we've learned that the Air Force, Army, Navy football players will be depicted in this game, but they will not receive any of that $600. Not that they need it, but it's just the principle for me.
I wonder why. I'm going to read an article real quick to make sure, because I believe that the Academy, they get paid the equivalent of like an E1, which is like, the Air Force, that's an Airman Basic. I think Army is a private.
Yeah. Corporal.
So I think they get paid
seamen.
That. So.
Or I guess they're sailors. I don't know. They might have got politically correct on us.
Yeah, so I think that they do get paid some kind of
stipend or something.
Yeah, some kind of like pay scale.
But for me, I don't care about any of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is America. And you should be able, regardless of all that, you know what I mean? Like, you're making money off of my likeness. I should receive something, which is the whole problem with college sports in the first place, is that it took us this long to get to NIL because they were making all this money off the players' back that the players weren't seeing. And NIL ain't enough. Like, I know everybody out there is talking about how NIL is going to ruin the sport and all that kind of stuff like that. But when you got the Big Ten literally signing a $7 billion TV deal that the players see nothing of, how many people even know the Big Ten commissioner's name? Like, how many people knew it before I said it like 2 weeks ago on my Get It Off My Chest or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So, like, the players are still not getting what they should get. And, so that's why I like, here it comes. It really chaps my hide, that everybody supports the troops except the troops.
It's like I said, I'm gonna come up with a company. I'm gonna be a military consultant. I'm just gonna sit in the back of the room, and when they come up with an idea and be like, "Nah, that's stupid, dog." That's gonna be the whole thing. I'm not gonna add any insight. I'm like, "Nah, that's dumb."
Saying you already got the drawing board. You already got the Broken Windows Initiative. It's time for Shattered Glass Incorporated.
Yo, exactly. Because, like I said, I still work for the Air Force now. And sometimes it's like, yeah, what are y'all thinking? These people not coming out of retirement. Like, we're not doing that. Like, just y'all could have saved that email. I got
one friend that's thinking about it, actually. I got a friend that's thinking about it.
Yeah, they must really miss it.
Nah, I don't miss it. Because, first of all, even if I wanted to come back, I'm like, y'all ain't taking this VA from me. Read the fine print. I don't even know what's in the fine print, but there is a fine
I know that's
print.
gone. I know that's because you got to say, at least I remember, you got to say you're healthy enough to join. I ain't coming back. I ain't healthy enough to join. You told me on my way out that I wasn't healthy enough to stay in. I'm not healthy enough to come back.
I pinched a nerve in my neck the other day, and it was affecting my arm. I went to the emergency room Saturday. This is a true story. I was up for 24 hours from Saturday morning to Sunday, and I thought I was having a heart attack because my arm was hurting so bad it was numb. I went to the emergency room. They was like, "No, you got a pinched nerve, dog."
Yo, I bent over to pick up my snowboard pants out the snowboard bag, and my back was hurting all weekend. So I'm out there trying to snowboard. I'm stretching my neck and my lower spine. I'm getting stretched between my
Yeah. As soon as
spine.
we get off of here, I'm gonna put the joint on my neck. I got my muscle
Um,
relaxers. You know what I'm saying? It's
I was at I went to the chiropractor today. He gave me this exercise. He's like, do this. So I'm like,
yeah.
I'm falling apart.
You
So
know
I'm
what I'm
definitely
saying?
not coming back. But
I'm
yeah,
about to
support
pop
troops.
this
Like I said,
muscle
they
relaxer.
they get a pay. They get paid every month. They get $1,272.20 a month
That's cool.
as cadets at the school. That's every cadet.
That's cool. Guess
So they
what?
all get paid.
Guess
So
what?
maybe they don't want to extend. I don't know if it's a legal thing, but maybe they just don't want to give. For instance,
But guess what? I
if
got
you're a
income
football
coming
player,
in. If somebody uses sports reports disorder, I want my coins.
yeah, but if they pay the football players and it's like, well, we can't pay the volleyball team. Once again, I don't think it's a fully thought out concept because a
Right.
lot of Air Force decisions are made in a vacuum. They're not made with a lot of outside influence. Sometimes it's the person at the head of the table saying, "Charge that hill." We go up the hill. That's it.
Okay, well, acknowledge the tribal
Yeah.
chief. But yeah,
You
like,
wait till you retire like me, and I sit in my cubicle and I talk real loud about how stuff sounds stupid.
that's what always upsets me about people that call themselves patriots and things like that. You know what I
Those people
mean?
aren't
Like
patriots.
all this stuff
Or
applies
that I
until
would have
you
joined.
can't
I would have joined if I don't want. I can't have somebody yelling in my face.
bone
Shut
spurs.
up.
It applies to you if it applies to you because I want my coins. Like anything that you do in America that somebody else is benefiting from, you want your coins. And I agree, Residente. I
I
agree,
agree. I
Residente.
agree.
I don't know what volleyball's bringing in. I don't know what the discus team is bringing in. But if you bring nothing, you receive nothing. So I'm 100% on board with that. But obviously these players are bringing in something. They're going to be in
Yeah, but the
this
thing,
video
but
game.
that's the difference. The thing with military academies and just military formats in general is that there is a standard, and sticking as close as you can to that standard will prevent people from not understanding going
Right,
forward.
right,
It's
right.
not always the greatest answer, and sometimes you have to make decisions for the masses that maybe someone within that confine could benefit from it. But if everybody can't benefit from it, if I just draw this line in the sand saying, hey, everybody over 6'5" can't be a fighter pilot. If that's the number, then that's the number. That way, going into pilot training, like, hey, if you're this tall, you can't fit in the cockpit of an F-16. You can fit here. You can't, so it's like sometimes we gotta kind of have these standards. And if the standard is, listen, we'll give you your stipend as a cadet. You get to play here. Because you get exceptions for PT because
Right.
a lot of offensive linemen have to be bigger than the waist and other things like that. So you're already they do get some exceptions, but we're going to draw the line at, listen, our athletes aren't going to get extra money. Then that's the line. We could dislike the line, but as long as it's clear, like I said, no
True indeed.
athlete's going to get extra money.
But nothing ever changes. I mean, not that it will change, but nothing ever changes if we remain quiet about it. You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't matter if it change.
So
You
I'm
can
here.
voice your opinion, but I'm just
You
going to
know
give
what,
you
Mr.
this. Like,
Logical?
this is the line.
You know what,
You know
Mr.
me.
Logical? You
I was
told the
blue.
company line.
People. Yeah, I was. Listen, I argue and everything else, but in the same sense, when it came down to it, I was like, listen, in order for us to get this whole thing accomplished, your personal feelings, I don't need. The fact of the matter is, we at work, it's midnight. We launching 10 jets between now and 7 a.m.
That's
So
all it is right there.
you gotta do this work until we get to 7 a.m. At 7:01, we can have a conversation about the workload from midnight to 7 a.m. I'm not going to have that conversation at 3
Well,
5
you know what?
to get these jets in the air. We can have that conversation after the fact. So you can have the conversation later after you sign a new contract or the school year is over. But they've already made a decision that, hey, you're not going to get paid. We don't have time to discuss it right now. We get some more data. You can bring it back to the table. And we can go from there. But like I said, I argue with the
you
best
go
girl.
ahead and toe the line. I will lead the
I
charge
ain't towing it.
for
I'm
these
telling
players
you, I'm
to
here.
get their $600 that they've earned by being depicted in a video game. They're already going to be exploited.
When
They're
they
already going to be
graduate,
exploited. They're already going to be taken advantage of. I just want them to have their $600.
They'll be all right when they get to come to the base and
they
talk
already
to some
can't
old
get
head
NIL.
like me.
They already can't get NIL. Like, just give them.
But
you $600.
Once again, you get to serve your country. That is the thing that you sign up for. That is the benefit to your existence. Hey, you did it.
Well,
you could have not realistic.
Learned nothing else on Sports Reports is ordered.
Listen,
we boycott Peacock and we want the troops to get their $600.
Listen, we not doing none of that. We understand what we signed up for. You can do it.
Cadets.
You got it. This guy, I'm pointing the right direction. That guy has, I'm telling you, don't come to me after you already signed up for something that you know will have a very
you didn't know there was
a bit of a hole.
There was no EA Sports when they joined.
They're gonna make decisions in your existence that you may not like.
There was no video game when they joined.
I'm not talking about the
$600 was on the table.
I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about, listen, they're going to tell you how to cut your hair. They're going to tell you where to wake up.
That colonel is taking money under the table to represent somebody's campaign when he's in uniform.
Nah, he's good. They're just going to hire him later. He'll be like the director of some major corporation later. He's shaking the hands and kissing the babies. I get it. Listen, I'm not advocating for that. All I'm saying is this. When you sign up for something and you know these people are going to have a bit of an autonomy of your existence, I know it can get frustrating. I did it. I did 22 years, and I'm still working there now. So when they change the schedule from 9 to 3 to 8 to 4,
so basically, you go and join me when you get a new job. That's what's going on here.
Listen, I'm not worried about what they hear. They can hear this. I play it at work. I play that work on a 65-inch TVs that we spend all this money on and cover the wall. Well, they're actually on the floor now. We got to get them mounted to the wall. I play this show at work. All I'm saying is this: you know what's coming. You may not like it, but you know there's going to be a certain level of control that this organization, being the Department of Defense, is going to have over your life. There's going to be perks. You can't get all of them. They're going to take a few of them away. I used to work 9 to 3. Everyone was like, oh my God, working 8 to 4. I'm like, listen, man, I used to work 12-hour shifts on the flight line, was basically with 13-hour shifts from the factory and getting tools, getting my truck and everything else. So it's like, you give me the 6 hours to 8 hours, I'm good to go. I know it can get worse. But after we get over this hill, we can evaluate how we had to charge it. But until then, we charging this hill, and we'll figure out everything else afterwards.
For sure. But on that note, y'all, thanks for joining us. Thanks for the support. Like, review, subscribe. I am
we go into the wild blue yonder.
Yeah, all of that. I am 25. He is Mr. Company. I mean, Mr. Logical. He is Mr. Logical. You know what I'm saying? Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Thursday.
U.S. Air Force retired. I put it all in my emails.
You know, the Air Force lost me when they got rid of, Adam Boy, give him the gun. They lost me with that. You know what I'm saying?
I heard that. It hurt my soul. I'm not going to change.
You know what I'm saying?
I learned one song.
Yes. But we love you, America. We'll see you in a few days. I got to go call Grandma real quick. You know what I'm saying? See if she needs some more Epsom salt. Y'all have a good night. God bless.
Peace.
Peace.